7:01, and we'll call this okay. 7:01. We call the meeting to order. And I think we are all aware the primary function of this meeting is to set the direction of the club, District 1 going forward. And this would be the time to consider any changes, revise anything that are currently in our bylaws that we would wish to change. Primarily, I speak of our 2009 annual report. And specifically referring to article number 11.
Do you have a copy of the agenda for today, Mr. Chairman?
I do not.
Okay.
It's out on the board if you'd like to. Okay. So when I mention taking the direction of the department, my primary function at this time will be to try to change this from the strong chief stature, removing that from our warrant. Attorney Cruz has done some work with that, and he's aware of it. So at this time, if we hire a chief, automatically he becomes a strong chief.
Correct.
Which, based on the town's direction all around town, most taxpayers do not like the situation when someone gets tenure for life. I think you are well aware of the contracts that have been changed and that the town goes through change in them. And this is the time that I would like to not hire, appoint, or direct a chief going forward until we can change that, which would be 3 years after the date, which would be April 2012. Brian, do we need a motion to discuss anything? Are we within our...
In terms of...
discussing the direction of the organization?
Well, in terms of the moving away from the strong chief statute, obviously it does have to be 3 years out. There is still then some statutory ambiguity on whether or not we can revoke the acceptance. It's unclear based on what can charitably be called some poor legislative drafting. We think the intent is clear that you can. I think it's definitely feasible for us to go forward in April with the motion warrant article to revoke the acceptance. In the interim, my understanding is you discussed with Attorney Salastano the possibility of having some type of administrator oversee the department until such time as the overall direction is decided in a permanent manner. What you guys want to do in particular in terms of that is sort of up to you. It's not a legal issue per se. It's just got to decide on something. In that respect, I do want to point out that we do need to, and whether you want to talk about this now or later, we do need to, there are certain, for the most part, whoever is in charge of the department locally can fulfill most of the functions statutorily on his own. There are certain few issues that the local personnel can only do if they have authorization from the fire marshal. One of which is to inspect and conduct investigations into fires and explosions. And that does require a designation from the fire marshal. So that does have to happen soon, or otherwise the fire marshal is going to be irritated if he has to come down personally to conduct an inspection or investigation. For the most part, however, things like smoke detectors, fire alarms, carbon monoxide detectors. Those can all be done locally without fire marshal designation. So it's just a couple of things, but it does require designation. That should be done. And that can always be redone again as needed. But currently, right now, Mr. Alcadino is the designee of the marshal in the town, except for he is no longer conducting administrative authority. So we do need to designate someone.
That's correct. And as the delegated authority, what kind of responsibility are the full responsibilities of that delegation still on Mr. Alcadino?
That would be my according. I spoke with General Counsel's office about the Department of Fire Services. They just need. They don't care. They don't care who it is, how it's done. All they want is someone down here that can do that. If we want to change who it is, we just need to notify them by letter saying we don't want this person designated anymore, want this person designated.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. But it should get done because, as I said, otherwise there's no one locally that can do certain things like inspect nursing homes and do investigations in fires. And from what I spoke with the General Counsel's office anyway, the fire marshal's office is very strapped for personnel, and they do not appreciate having to go locally to do those types of things. So we should get that done. But that is only for those few instances, and according to the General Counsel's office, but it's only about 10% of the functions require that designation. The other 90% actually just inherently fall by statute to whoever is the lead person in the department, however they happen to be titled. The statute is very vague. They just call him the head of the department and defines that as being the CEO. So that's whoever happens to be the ranking individual in the department at the time to do most of the functions. But there are those few functions that do require designation from the chief, from the fire marshal. So that should get done.
Could you explain that a little more to me?
Sure. There's, by statute and regulation, there's many functions that the local departments do, signing off on fire alarms, smoke detectors, inspecting gas stations, doing investigations of fires. There's probably a ton more than I'm not aware of. Most of those, by statute and regulation, are the authority to do it is inherently placed upon the head of the department. That's how it's referred to in the statute, head of the department. Head of the department is simply defined as the chief executive officer of the department. It's not referred to as a particular title. It's not referred to as a particular rank or office. It doesn't require designation from the fire marshal. It just happens to be the chief executive officer at any given time in the fire department. So who's ever in charge of the fire department at that time can do all those things. There are a few things that by statute only the fire marshal can do unless he designates someone. The fire marshal likes to designate people because he doesn't like to have to go out locally to every single jurisdiction to do those things, one of which is investigating fires and explosions. So for those few things, each locality gets a designee. That designee doesn't even have to be the head of the department. That can be whoever we want him to be, as long as he's within the department.
Okay.
So that's
those instances you're talking about are very seldom here.
Seldom, yes.
Okay. So we're
For
not
the day-to-day things,
correct.
The head of the department, whoever that happens to be, has inherent statutory authority to do it.
Okay.
So as I said, it's not an immediate crisis thing where we need to get a new designation done, but if we don't do it in a timely fashion and then we do have a fire and the fire marshal has to come down to investigate it, he's not going to be done.
Okay. The letters that I handed to you were from Mr. Cruz, Attorney Cruz, stating that. I also provided Mr. Judson to your satisfaction. I have one more from for the inspections that I'll give to you after. A gentleman looking for an inspection for a transfer of property.
So if I read this correctly, Mr. Chairman, I guess Mr. Judson would satisfy
Mr. Judson
the need.
is satisfying the need at this time, and that's one of the reasons why it's been tranquil. Things have been he's been handling that,
All right.
Taking care of that. If there's a fire, we have a fireman here to get out there and get into it and direct the men. So,
Mr. Chairman, I
question.
Yes.
So then, the Prudential will be inserting an article in the warrant next April to remove this from chief.
Do we make the motion now? Do
No, you
we,
don't have to.
you know,
No.
would I like that? That's what I would, that's my
That's
pleasure.
your decision.
But we need
Prudential will have
to,
to make that decision if they want to insert that article in the warrant for the annual meeting.
right. I would hate to face the taxpayers saying, no, I don't want it. I want to have someone with tenure for life.
Yeah,
Anyone
that's-
who does that would be political suicide, as well as not well liked by your neighbors, I believe.
And we'll have to make sure the legal writing, to get it on the warrant.
That is correct. I mean, we can make the motion now. This gives me, by bringing this up, the reason I bring this up is, this is why I don't say, let's get into it now. Let's roll up our sleeves, start interviewing, start doing a nationwide search. This is why we have somebody handling the firefight inside.
We have plenty of time because we normally.
We have the
start
time.
Discussing articles like in March.
But
getting ready
if
for-
it's a moot point, if my board members, other board members, do not want to go forward with changing this, then we should take a different direction and cut our losses now and start looking in another direction.
You're still
Or
playing-
don't make any
Just
changes.
point there, we always do this like in March, so we have plenty of time, so if it's gonna be done. can
We
do
do.
it.
I feel that we should probably take a vote now to say that's what their pleasure is, because if not, this could be very different. The next few months or few weeks could be very different. Is that correct, Attorney Cruz? Could we take the vote now to say,
Consensus, you're just asking for a
Yeah,
consensus.
I mean, you wouldn't, and I don't want to be unequivocal having now looked carefully at the district files with respect to this, but I mean, you wouldn't be you're not creating a warrant now. So it's really just you guys saying what you want to do. If you want to make a motion with respect to that, by all means you can. It doesn't really, you're still going to have the motion to put on the warrant in the spring no matter what. So it's really just to give a public sense of what your feelings are. That's what you're doing.
okay? So do I have a motion for the consensus?
I'll give you the motion for the consensus.
Okay, discussion?
I'd like to say that, I'm in favor of going along with you on this. However, I'd like to say that if we're going to do a search for a chief,
Yes.
I think we'd be putting the cart before the horse until the voters decide as to exactly what they want. I mean, I wouldn't want to see us spend the money looking for a chief and it not pass, because you'll be advertising and reviewing resumes for the weak chief status, and it could change. So all those candidates would have to be thrown out. We'd be looking for a new set.
Chief Dumont, could I call on you, because I know you were active in the last search? Is that an accurate statement, that if we are going forward presuming that it would be for a weak chief, and we begin the process, let's say January 1st, we start the process, would that be a waste of time for the people if we then don't make the cutoff and the change isn't made, the voters decide they want to have a strong chief?
Yeah, it would be, because of the fact that anybody who's applying, any chief that would apply, or any person who has the qualifications would apply, generally they want to apply as a strong chief. They don't want to come in here and in the next 6 months from now you can. I mean, he's moved from wherever he is to Dartmouth nearby, and he's got to come to this district because we voted on that. We didn't allow people to live out of the district simply because we have the situation that we have here, and they wouldn't be able to vote or partake in the meeting if they weren't registered in the district. So the problem would be the fact that either a strong or a weak chief makes the determination of who's going to apply for the job. And there are not many chiefs now that are looking for jobs that want to be a weak chief. Unless, I think you can make some arrangements where being a strong chief in running the department and being a strong chief, having tenure are really two different things. It's the same law, but what it does is when you're a strong chief within the department, you run the department. You are the top dog. You're the one that does the hiring and firing. And you also appoint, the chief would also appoint the deputy. Whereas a weak chief, the chief has authority, obviously, but if the Prudential Committee, for instance, they don't run the department, but the financial board, they only appoint the chief. But they also have to appoint the deputy chief at that point. If there were a contract made, and I know there are contracts made, because I think the police chief in Dartmouth is set up this way, where he's a strong chief as far as running the department, but for lack of a better term, a weak chief as far as tenure. He has a 3-year contract. And technically, if he does a good job, the selectmen may decide to keep him on. If he doesn't, they can terminate the contract, just as you did here. So that's the difference. People want to come in and they want to be able to run the department. If you give them the responsibility and all the responsibilities of the fire marshal, he wants to be able to come in and operate without having somebody else on the outside saying, you shouldn't do that, or you don't want to do that, or you know. That's what the problem was with an elected chief. When you're doing something and you're trying to run the department properly, and somebody on the outside says, "I'll get you with the election," and I had that said to me many times because people didn't like what you told them, because you can't set a fire at any time that you want. You want to burn garbage or whatever. That's one of the things. So that's the reason why they want to keep the strong chief as far as operating the department. Some of them want the strong chief simply because they think there's a tenure. And it depends on how you write your contract. As far as what I know, and I know other chiefs that have done that. They write a contract and they say, okay, you've got a 3-year contract, and at the end of your contract we'll review your status. If we think we should renew that 3-year contract or whatever, we'll do it. If not, we'll get somebody else. And I think you can do that, I'm sure you can do that, if you want to keep the status of strong chief as the operating portion of the department.
Okay. Attorney Cruz, would you be able to verify that?
Yeah, my concern is there's a distinction between simply revoking Section 42
Yeah.
and going back to having an appointed chief engineer and switching from 42 to 42A, a stronger weak chief. And I, frankly, haven't looked into that, so I'm happy to do that. But those are two different issues. I wouldn't want to opine on something that I haven't reviewed thoroughly. So I'm happy to look into that. That's an option that the Prudential Committee is considering, going from one type of chief to another rather than going back to mentioning.
Sure. I know that's my biggest concern is the tenure for life, because as it simply reads, it says they have tenure. So if there is a way that we can do it that would not create a litigious,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of that 3 years, if that person's very upset that they're not being renewed,
Yeah, happy to look into it.
it doesn't matter. Okay. So we have that. did you have anything to add? Any questions?
I just wanted to know about the commercial inspections, if who's able to do those, if we need somebody to do those, or are we all set
Well,
with that?
the issues that we have coming up are the nursing homes. Mr. Judson told me that that is coming up there quarterly. Also, by the end of the year, all liquor licenses establishments have to be done.
I don't believe that the head of the department can do the nursing homes. I believe that might actually require fire marshal designation. That might be one of the things that requires.
Nursing
Yeah,
homes,
nursing homes, I believe, requires. Yeah, nursing homes.
liquor stores.
No gas stations. I
Not,
believe.
not particularly liquor store, but any state building, any nursing home, school buildings,
Schools.
you have to have delegation authority.
So if the nursing home is coming up,
Public
we should
building.
be a designation done.
We should, absolutely. If nothing, if for no other purpose than to bring some stability down here, I'd like to have something worked out. If we can't work it out today, then come back next week. But work something out where there's some stability and the firefighters know what direction we're going. They know we're waiting until April at this time. If Brian Cruz comes back with something saying, no, we can hire you under the strong chief, we don't have to guarantee tenure, it's all in the way the contract's written, then maybe we could speed that process up.
Sounds like we still have to rewrite that bylaw,
We still have to rewrite,
and that's April.
that would be April, if unless he says we can keep that statute in,
My law would be May, and our annual meeting in May.
but we have to have it settled by April. So May would be, and then at that point, I would be looking to try to get somebody started for the first of the fiscal year, the beginning of the fiscal year. So, that's discussed, pretty much what I'm talking about as far as the direction of the organization.
Well, reading your letter here, it seems like we already have a person that could be a designated person.
We do. We have Mr. Judson, who basically what I've been talking about and I would like to propose to my board would be split it. Continue, Mr. Judson would continue as he has been with his title as the acting deputy. He would proceed as going forward with running the day-to-day operations, with running the department, the schedules, and that type of thing. And I would like to propose that we hire, out of support of the district, on a part-time basis, someone to do the more clerical to help us with the search for the new chief and split it.
I think you're getting a little ahead of ourselves looking for research right now.
No,
We still
I'm
have
not
to-
saying we would have him start. I'm saying somebody who has the capabilities of that, who can work with the state fire marshal, who can get the delegation to handle certain things, and then Mr. Judson would be able to handle, what he's been doing right along.
Have you asked Mr. Judson if he could do the day-to-day? You said he could do the day-to-day. Could he do the clerical too? Why would I want to pay two people? I'm confused.
Well,
I mean, to me, I'd rather pay one person.
I am looking at it as, we already are paying Mr. Judson. He would not change.
Okay.
That would remain constant. We can't ask him to stay doing it and then having everything else dumped on him. He's been doing a great job doing what he's doing. My proposal would be to have somebody else. So now we've divided and conquered. And just like we were discussing it yesterday, Mr. Judson and I, we have two inspectors. And hopefully with this, he was going to give written authority to one of them. Now, should something happen to that one person, what happens if he's away on vacation and we need inspections? I'd like to have a written letter to the other person.
Correct.
As a backup. And now we would have a backup to everything.
Something we should have.
Checks and balances,
Something-
checks and balances. So
That's fine.
that's why I'm proposing splitting the position.
We can still accomplish the same thing by the letters of delegation.
Yes,
I look, you're from the private sector. Here I am, we have one person in the job right now, and after 9/11, things change. You just get more work, it just gets dumped on you. I'm sorry, you just have to do it, and that's life. Take it or leave it, someone else will do it. That's how things are today, in the business world today, which you were in.
to
I
a
can't-
point. There becomes, that would be the economy of scales. There's a diseconomy of scales. At some point, too much is done,
Oh, I understand.
and then it creates the problems.
I see when you
So-
say, when you're going for the search committee, that would not be under his realm of responsibilities, but the day-to-day, opening letters, answering all the administrative type work like that should be. If the chief was doing it, he should do it too. That's,
If I may comment, through you, Mr. Chairman. If the
Yes.
attempt effectively is to keep me in my current role, which apparently would constitute head of department, is that correct, by being the senior ranking officer?
At this time, yes, you are.
Effectively continuing on a part-time basis, which I do now, which
That's
means that
correct.
I also potentially could have other obligations that go along, with my day-to-day routine. It may be something that the board would want to consider, frankly, in that I would be handling effectively, like you said, the day-to-day internal work within the station, scheduling various issues as they pertain primarily to the firefighting end of it. And then, in fact, another part-time individual or something along those lines to handle these specific administrative issues.
The state fire marshal, the
Things along those lines. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily be in a situation where you'd have one person that would be here in the same circumstances that the chief was under, because he was basically on a 40-hour week.
Correct.
Neither of us effectively would be functioning on a 40-hour week.
Correct.
Both be part-time, so I mean, the sum of the two might equal the whole, but one particular person effectively wouldn't be carrying the entire load on a part-time basis, I mean, which is...
Correct. Which, I mean, after discussing things with you, would be
Correct.
agreeable to you. Okay. Mr. Silver, do you have any comments, questions?
Well, the way we're making it sound like, I think Marcel would probably be the perfect candidate for that person because he knows it all already. If he was willing to accept something like that.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. There's no surprise, we've had a meeting with District 2. We brought them in, we discussed the possibility of a merger. That's something I'd like to put a non-binding question on for the next warrant, just to get the taxpayers' sense. After finding out more information, I'm not sure if that's such the greatest idea. So I'm willing to backtrack, but I also want to hear from the public before I give it up absolutely. So I also was thinking, along the lines of having Tim Andrade come down here. But Mr. Dumont, okay, he's here, he's part of the district. I know Mr. Judson said he'd like to see somebody from within the department, because he feels that the department can handle itself. We don't need to bring in outsiders unless it's mutual aid. We do have a mutual aid agreement intact. You have been speaking to the other chiefs.
I have, I've met with both of them on a couple of occasions over the past 2 weeks.
Okay.
Made them fully aware of the circumstances that we're in at the moment.
Okay.
And they both expressed their willingness to cooperate
Absolutely.
to whatever extent necessary.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, if that was a motion brought forward by Jojo, I can second that for him.
Okay. Mr. Dumont, Chief? Questions, thoughts, part-time, working with Mr. Judson, problems,
No,
issues?
I don't have a problem with doing part-time because I'm retired, so.
Right.
So, I do have the time, in order to save the district and in order to keep the district going, I would accept that, and I think we'd have to work out some details as to what
Absolutely, I mean,
we have to do. This is,
a brainstorming type of
Yeah.
session is how I envisioned it. I don't foresee us leaving with everything set in stone for the next 9 months. Any foreseeable problems with the state fire marshal?
no, I was in contact with the state fire marshal this week, just to check on a couple of questions that you had with reference to things that have happened. And I did get the answers from him. I do have an email from well, he's kind of the assistant fire marshal, right, deputy fire marshal now. He's also the director of Homeland Security. And I spoke with him a couple of times. He's called me a couple of times. And I guess our council spoke with them yesterday. And,
That's correct.
So, but like I said, I do have the answers that he's talked to. I know the fire marshal well. I know Kevin Partridge well, and because I was on the Fire Service Commission, the charter member of the Fire Service Commission, for a while I was still chief. Have to be chief. So I've met with him many times. I know him. I know their procedures. I know the whole story as far as that goes.
Okay.
I have no problem.
We'll take a vote on that.
Attorney Cruz, any questions or concerns or anything
as I
leaving
said-
out? Would we now take a vote and does the committee as a whole, can they have me as the chairman meet with Mr. Judson and Mr. Dumont and hash this out and
Yeah, I would say.
present
it would-
something
it
to
would
them
still- It
separately?
would still require something to come back afterwards to vote on whatever you guys eventually agree upon. But,
Okay. So
because I don't think there's any way for, not, because the details at this point I don't think are in any way clear. There's no
No,
way for them
no.
to direct you in any specifics that they could sign off on in advance. So I
Correct.
do think it would require coming back.
Correct. So the three of us could have a meeting.
Why can't we do it in executive session?
It's really,
I
I
want-
can't think of a reason why it could go into executive session.
Well, if I wanted to be at the meeting.
That's not a reason to go into it. I mean,
Okay.
there's no, it doesn't really.
What I was thinking is we
not
could
collective
meet, we
bargaining.
could put something in writing, then I could just pass it to the other two members.
Yeah,
Is
as long as
that-
there's no discussion, it can get
I can
looked at
pass
in
it to the other
advance,
two members. We could come back to our regular, we could schedule another
Yeah.
meeting for next Wednesday, or we could come back, our next planned meeting is in 2 weeks, which is probably more realistic to get something of quality down.
The only thing I want to know is when is that that quarter in nursing inspection coming up?
One thing I just want to say, the Declaration of Authority specifically covers fire investigations. I have been doing all the fire investigations, or most of the fire investigations. We do have several other people that do it, but I do most of them. And I can't do that unless I have the delegation of authority, which we have. Delegation of authority. So,
Right, which makes time of the essence.
Which is
yeah,
why.
I mean, we could have a fire tonight, and
We would have to call the fire marshal at this point.
yeah, and that wouldn't make any.
I thought we approved Mr. Judson to be our delegate right now, correct? He would have the delegation.
Not for fire inspections.
Well,
Right.
what
But
you
he
could,
could.
what you could do if you wanted to is appoint him until you've confirmed the details
Is
then
there
reappoint.
only one delegation of authority at a time?
at a time. But you can change that as often as you want. It just requires you asking the fire marshal to change it.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you just, if you're not, if there's an issue with how soon you think this arrangement's gonna get done,
We could
I
ask
would-
tomorrow.
I would suggest designating someone fairly quickly, because you don't wanna be left in this, in the fire marshal's office, the general counsel was very firm about the idea of we should get someone designated.
Okay. Do you
So-
understand what?
Whether that it's only a
Kind of
2-week
blocking
period and then
yourself.
we do it again later, we shouldn't be sitting around not able to do these functions locally because we haven't designated someone.
Okay.
So is this something that should be voted on to?
Yes,
Yeah, just,
absolutely.
and then I'll take to the general counsel's office and they'll get it done.
Okay. Mr. Ferrer, did you?
Quick thing, 2 years ago, I was the assistant chief, or the Chief Alcadino. I think you guys are looking into this way too high. I believe you have the minutes of the meeting of last week where Chief Alcadino has resigned or pending is on suspension or whatever you want to call it. You have those minutes approved, correct? Did you approve those minutes yet?
No, we will approve those at our regular meeting next week.
So if you were to take those minutes of that meeting, fax them to the fire marshal's office with, Captain Judson, or Deputy Chief Judson, I don't see a problem with the fire marshal realizing what's going on,
No,
wanting him the authority, making him the delegation of authority. Then the deputy chief now can appoint whoever he wants through a verbal. Chief Alcadino, myself, I used to go out and do some of the home inspections. I did nursing homes and did other things. The chief has a delegation authority from the fire marshal. He can verbally give it to anyone, to myself, to anybody who's available, who has the qualifications.
and that's what Mr. Harron
So
is
if you approve
asking.
the minutes, send it to the fire marshal, show him what's going on, he would award Deputy Chief Judson delegation of authority, because I'm sure this has happened before.
In fact,
we
it
don't
doesn't-
even need to send them.
It doesn't even require the minutes being approved, because it doesn't have to be the head of the department that's designated. So the fire marshal doesn't care what the rank or designation or what the local issues are. He doesn't care. He just wants to know who we want as a district to be
Right.
designated. That's it.
Right.
So we can submit whatever name we want, and
He rubber stamps
he just wants someone locally, so he's not doing it himself. So
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't require approval of the minutes. We just say this is who we want, and
Okay.
then that'll be it.
And then, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Stanley Bettencourt Jr., 36 Smith Street. Just a clarification, if I may. Captain of the fire department for 29 years. It sounds like to me that you're going to have two heads of the department. In any chain of command structure, that could be a great risk, as you can understand. People won't know who to listen to. Whoever you select should have that delegation to delegate, and then that person would also run the department. If Marcel, who has an extensive knowledge with his background, is selected as a administrator, then that should be that role. They shouldn't be confused amongst our men. We have
We need to.
a roster of 35 people here, and quite frankly, within the last couple of days, we've had some things we have to look into, as we spoke of. So I think it's very important that, hopefully tonight we get some delineation of that so we can solve some issues. And make sure that we understand, the guys understand what direction we're going.
And that's
very
where
critical.
the three of us would get together, put everything in writing, and hammer it out that way. Then present it, let the board review, let them have some input before we even finalize anything. But I think it is a good, I second, or it's already been seconded, that we do ask the fire marshal to designate the authority to John Judson.
Now, how long will that take? I mean, if we're going to write a letter off tomorrow,
I can get a letter out to the general counsel's office tomorrow. I can talk to them. I don't see why. I can't say, it's going to happen in a day, but it's in their best interest to do it quickly, because otherwise it's on them. It's not like those investigations or inspections don't happen. It just means that they have to be the ones responsible for it. So they're not going to sit on it. They've asked us to designate someone there. They've said, please take care of this and let us know.
so the second problem we have, which is the designation of inspectors, would be solved immediately as soon as he gets it.
He would have
So in 5 minutes after he gets it, it's over. The other issues we have.
they chlorinate him and he's all set.
Okay, that's fine.
But he's going to be marked as a part-time, like the chief is going to
well, you can't call him chief, it'll be a chief status. Once you send that, he'll
Head of the department.
yeah, he'll be at chief status, so anything.
Well, no, because
Well, the
the
fire marshal, once he gets it, the fire marshal standards.
the fire marshal designation isn't with respect to any particular rank. You could nominate like a grunt level firefighter to be the designee if you want to. It just says the fire marshal has to designate someone. Now that doesn't happen normally because it doesn't make sense, but it's not particular. You don't have to designate the chief, or if you're designated, you don't become the chief. You just have to designate someone in the district. So that designation won't affect rank or title. It's just it's just saying you are the person in the district. The fire marshal says does this stuff. That's all it means. So in that respect, it doesn't really. It's not muddying of the waters in any respect. You could be designated.
Well, the only reason I say is because they tried that at Bourne Fire, and they told them, no, you can't do it. And we actually had to pull the police chief and have him play a dual role. That's why I just want to make sure you guys know. Because they said, oh, we're just going to promote within, and they said, no, you can't do that. And they actually had to take their police chief and have their police chief on the fire department for about 6 months.
With respect to what were they told they couldn't do?
The fire chief was eliminated,
Yeah.
and then they said, we're going to upmove the deputy chief until we find a fire chief, something similar to this. And in doing so, they found out that they couldn't do that, so they had to take the police chief and make him. So that's why
But
I
does
was
that
curious.
does that have to do with the designation, or does that have to do with what the
with delegating the authority of delegating authority to say, you know, Mr. Dumont, we're going to have you come in and do our inspections. Like, you need the role, the authority to do that, granted through the fire marshal's
Yes,
office,
but-
which the fire chief would do. But if you don't have a fire chief, then you have to put that authority upon someone. And in Bourne, they had to move it to the police chief.
Yes, but doing so doesn't suddenly create it doesn't create a new chief. But yes,
But they couldn't move. What they wanted to do is like what you were just talking about was move someone in as like a part-time status, but not make them like the intern chief. And because they didn't do that, they said that couldn't happen, so they moved the police chief in.
And is this a department or?
This is, yeah, Bourne
It's a
Fire. Never a
department,
career department. This is
not a
just-
district.
No, it's not a district. But it's
There is
still,
some difference.
it's a fire chief. And now the other thing too is like I was
it also
saying,
depends on what statute they're operating under. I mean, I wouldn't want to comment upon.
well, it was a strong chief, so.
And again, I don't want. There's a lot of issues up in the air with what statutes are in effect, and so all I'm going to say is, in talking with the general counsel's office for the Department of Fire Services, they simply said we need to designate someone. That's all they're looking for right now. So if it comes later that they have issue with who we're designated, approach that bridge when it comes to it, but what they've told me is we just need to designate someone. Whether this is because, and now when did this happen with Bourne, out of curiosity?
About maybe a year, well, a little less than a year ago.
Okay.
A little less than.
All right, and I'll be happy to ask him about it. But I don't want to, not knowing the details, make any presumptions about
Well,
it.
I just wanted to make a note.
Yeah, and I
because
appreciate
They were
that.
going to do something like this, move him up, and then they said that the guy that they wanted to move up originally couldn't do it because he was 67 years old, and they told him after 65 you can't do it.
Are they still
The statute said at 65 you're out. You can't do it. You can't be part of the fire service unless you're called upon. So
See,
that's why they cut it out. But that might be a career thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it
see,
seems
I
like
don't
the
know.
fine
I
line
don't
doesn't
know
happen between career and
whether that
call.
has an issue with respect to the particular fire statutes, whether it has an issue with the retirement statutes, and not knowing the specifics. But I'm happy to talk to him about it. I appreciate you bringing it up because I do plan on talking to the general counsel's office again tomorrow about this to confirm what's going to happen. So.
It's saying that the chairman of the Prudential Committee can send an email to the marshal once we've decided who they want it to proceed.
The paragraph before that, or the end of that paragraph,
Yes. Correct. It says that we could appoint someone else as acting or interim chief.
And then they will give the authority for that person. That's what, that's a kind of a summary of what we talked about.
That's
We
correct.
talked about it, and he did say that you can't have two delegations of authority in the same department from the marshal.
Okay,
You can designate somebody as the chief, they can designate someone to the authority to do their job. For instance, fire investigator or whatever it is. But generally, the delegation of authority goes to the head of the fire department, the chief of the department. Then he can, again, turn it over to whomever he feels they need to.
that's correct. Now, when somebody holds that authority,
Yes.
they also hold all the liability associated with it?
Yes.
So, and that's why they're indemnified
Yes.
through the department?
Right.
Okay, so if someone's holding that power and is not indemnified, and a lawsuit should occur against the department, that person would have to provide their own defense.
But we could have this answer tomorrow, so it's like a moot point if we're gonna get the answer tomorrow, hopefully from the marshal's office.
Correct.
And I can either take care of it for the general counsel office if you want to just email it
No,
directly.
that's fine. You've started. I feel more comfortable having you.
Was there ever a motion?
No,
made?
we need to, the motion was made by Mr. Herron, seconded by Mr. Sylvia. So I'd like to call a vote. All in favor of asking that the delegation of authority from the state fire marshal go to acting deputy John Judson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No, we're talking about the authority as, what about the inspections and everything?
He's gonna
He
tell-
already can do the inspections. We're gonna ask the state fire marshal to delegate the authority to Mr. Judson
Right.
so that Mr. Judson can make the appropriate delegations, further delegations within the department to say, okay, Mr. Stasio, I need you to go inspect this home. Mr. DeCudo, I need you to go inspect that home. 2 homes have to be done at the same time. One can go one place, one can go another. A house burns down like Noncliff. You can send any one of the fire inspectors out to the fire without their risk of liability.
See, I'm not 100% now on inspections. Do these people, whoever's doing them, have to be certified in any way of doing inspections? Any type of classing, certifications?
Both of our inspectors right now, Mr. Restaccio and Mr. DeCudo, although I'm not certain exactly with regard to Mr. DeCudo's status, but they have both taken various classes for residential and commercial inspections at this time.
So they are certified?
Yes. Depends what you call by certification. It's different levels of certification. They have taken them, and I believe Mr. Pistachio particularly does have accreditation, if you want to put it that way, through the marshal's office. Mr. DeCudo, I haven't spoken with directly on it, but I know he is also taking courses. Both have done.
That's residential, commercial, both?
Large residential, commercial. I'm not getting into commercial in the sense of major construction like you might see in the north end, but Chief Arruda has basically assured me that he would make his inspector available in the event that we had a circumstance that was somewhat exceptional for this area. 95% of our inspections are primarily residential resales and transfers, which both of those individuals have pretty extensive experience.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because as far as inspection, I know nothing about the laws of
Absolutely.
inspections. I just want to make sure, like, for instance, if we had District 2 or District 3 come in and do a commercial inspection, and what if something's wrong and then there's problems? I mean, whose problem is it? Is ours, or is it the guy that said it's okay?
They can't sign off on an inspection in this area, but they could send their full-time inspector that they have on staff down, assist our inspectors with the investigation and work it out. Ultimately, we would end up signing off, but Chief Arruda has assured me that he will make his people available to wherever extent necessary to help work through this.
And he would be able to delegate the authority to have District 3's commercial inspector come down, do the commercial inspection.
That's correct, I could actually.
And he would be indemnified, the chief of the District 3, the inspector, everybody would be indemnified. So, yes.
Just curious, at this particular time, who holds that delegation of authority?
Right now, John Alpadino.
And where he's not, quote, affiliated with this department? We have a house fire tonight, tragedy. How is he affected by that? Well, being immediately associated with it until you get done what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Well, Mr. Judson would be on the scene directing the fire at this time as the senior.
Delegation authority, doesn't it?
That doesn't matter. As long as it's an active fire scene, we have authority for the fire scene. Therefore, as the senior ranking officer, Mr. Judson is in control of the scene. If Mr. Judson is not there, the next senior officer would be in charge. So, the issue with the delegation of authority on the fire scene, from the way it's been explained to me, is after the scene wraps up and the investigators need to go back, that if we send one of our investigators in theory, they are trespassing, and they would be held liable. Therefore,
My point is timing is of essence.
time is of the essence, as we mentioned earlier. So, first thing tomorrow morning, with this vote, we need to finish. The state fire marshal did say that they would jump right on it. If there is a fire of that nature, we keep the fire watch on until after 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, we should be okay. If that's a problem, we do have the state fire marshal. They are, as much as it would irritate them, as much as it would be an inconvenience for them, I would have to apologize to them completely, but that is their duty. That is their job. I'd like to avoid that. This board would like to avoid that. But if it happens, so be it. So, we have 2 yeses, and we're waiting for Mr. Sylvia. Third, unanimous that we ask Attorney Cruz to contact the state fire marshal for the motion. Now, do I have a motion from the board to meet and discuss with Mr. Dumont and Mr. Judson?
I'll make a motion to discuss.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, this is a non-binding, it does not bind the board to any agreement with any participants. It simply will allow the 3 of us to meet, put some pen to paper, see what we can come up with, and report back to you. But now that time is not going to be as urgent, we can report back at our normal meeting, which would be the second Wednesday of October, October 12th, 7 o'clock, here in this room.
I had one more thing I just want to ask the board.
Let's just vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I just wanted to ask about, the chief turned in all his equipment and gear and everything, and I would like to ask the board if we can return back to him his Class A's. I think he deserves those, they were his. He had to turn them in due to the way the agreement was written, but I think he deserves to keep his Class A's and his badges and stuff.
I didn't put this on the agenda inadvertently.
No, I'm asking on the board if we can do that.
Can we do it as a consensus and then put it on the next meeting?
We can put it on
Yeah,
next
I mean, I would put on next meeting, because I don't want there to be an issue about how we gave away property in a meeting that wasn't noticed, so.
Okay, I don't foresee an issue.
I don't either, but you asked my legal opinion, so.
Okay, I would ask you to table that motion till the next time.
Okay.
But I fully expect a favorable outcome for that.
We could ask for a consensus now if you'd like, if that would,
Maybe it will make people's mind at ease, you know, I don't want to leave anyone hanging, so can I have a
no
consensus?
problem with that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll make the official vote.
But you are correct, we have to talk about that in an open meeting after being posted because it's department equipment.
So that'd be what, new business or something for the next?
I'll put it on the agenda. Okay, I think we fulfilled our
Okay.
tasks for tonight.
And would you like, with respect to issues of moving forward with the various possibilities with revocation or changing the statute, I'll have a letter for the Prudential committee if you'd like to come back in 2 weeks to discuss it in detail.
That would be good, focusing particularly on, can we keep the strong chief, which makes it sound like it might be better to get, we'd have a better selection of candidates, but not have tenure for life. That would be anyone else have anything to ask, council?
No.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn in 7:56.